Okay, thank you to Yurika and Group B of fourth-year student. Next, we will have a discussion entitled A Discussion of Issues Related to the Nth Room Case, which was mentioned before by Group A of fourth-year student among sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Please wait a moment while we prepare for the discussion. Okay, now that we are ready, we will now begin the discussion. I will continue to moderate this discussion. Okay, so we will present a discussion of issues related to the Nth Room case. This criminal case involved blackmail, cyber sex trafficking, and the spread of sexually exploitative videos in South Korea and other countries. With the development of technology, digital spaces such as SNS are becoming more and more active. And at the same time, sexual crimes that take advantage of the characteristics of these digital spaces are also becoming more prevalent. In this session, we'd like to inform you about the Nth Room case from what we learned from a documentary on it, and discuss with you some of the issues surrounding digital sex crimes. Before we start our discussion, I'd like to start with an overview of this case by Nayeon Kang, a third-year student from South Korea, who has been very interested in this case for a long time. Thank you, Nayeon.
Thank you very much, Miku. Then let me give you an overview of this case. So, as she mentioned, the Nth Room case is a digital sex crime and sexual exploitation case. Victims were lured and threatened on social networking sites and messenger apps from late 2018 to March 2020. Sexually exploitative video and images of them were taken and made available on the internet. First, I will briefly describe the crime in the case. The main perpetrator in this case, nicknamed Gakgat, told a woman who posted a photo of herself on Twitter that he was a member of the cyber task force and told her she must make a statement because she had been involved in a crime. Gakgat used personal information to blackmail this and other women into forcibly making sexual videos, which were then uploaded to 8 chat rooms, known as Room 1 through Room 8. Because of this practice, the chat rooms where the sexual explicit material was shared became known as the Nth Room. The sexual exploitation material shared in the Nth Room was also communicated in a chat room called the Gotham Room by a person with a nickname Watchman. He would receive money from people who responded to his messages and provide them with a link to the Nth Room. Hundreds of sexploits were shared per chat room, with which having at least 300 to many as 700 users. After a period of active operation, the Nth Room would disappear once in September 2019, but multiple rooms then appeared using the same method. The best known of this is the so-called Doctor's Room, operated by someone with a nickname Doctor. After receiving personal information and sexual photos from women who responded to his texts, he would then blackmail them with these photos and videos, instructing them to send him abuse and sexual photos and videos. It appears that Doctor sold the photos and videos obtained through this method and was anonymously paid for them in cryptocurrency. The main victim population of the Nth Room and its derivative rooms, such as the Doctor Room, were women in their to teenagers from 30s, including many minors such as junior high school students. Yojin Kim, Executive Director of the Korea Cyber Sexual Violence Response Center, said that the victims themselves voluntarily took the photos and videos, believing that they provided the pretext for the crime and were unable to inform people in the vicinity or actively report the incident. The following is a description of the course of the case. After the incident was reported and suspects were arrested, a trial of the main suspects were held. Hyung-ok Moon, the operator of the Amtrum and who used the nickname Got, was sentenced to 34 years in prison, 30 years for GPS installation, and 10 years for disclosure of personal information and related crimes. Sung-jin An, Gat's accomplice, was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and Watchman, who operated the Gotham room and publicized the Amtrum, was sentenced to 7 years in prison. In addition, 395 people were arrested for purchasing and possessing footage shared in the Amtrum. As for the doctor's room, Jubin Cho, who was the operator and used the nickname Doctor, was sentenced to 42 years in prison, 30 years for wearing a GPS, and 10 years for disclosing personal information. Won-ho Lee, who was an accomplice of Jubin Cho and publicized the doctor's room, was sentenced to 12 years in prison. And Hun Kang, who was responsible for peddling and luring victims and extracting process of sexual exploitation, was sentenced to 15 years. Numerous other accomplices and users are still on trial.
Thank you very much, Nayeon. These are truly heinous crimes, and I'm truly horrified and outraged to think that something like this was actually carried out. Now, based on what Nayeon has explained, we will now move on to our discussion. I'd like to ask for your opinions on the Netflix documentary, Cyber Hell, Exposing an Internet Horror, as well as your thoughts on this incident. First of all, let's hear from Akina, a sophomore. What did you think of the documentary?
Thank you, Miku. I found that it took a lot of time and effort to inform the public about the existence and realities of the Amtrum case, and to have it accepted as a major issue. It was frustrating to see the dilemma that despite the level of cruelty and very large number of victims and perpetrators, the public treated it as a common internet pornography case. I question why issues like this are not considered important unless they attract public attention. The news media also had to hesitate to report on the case because of this risk that their own personal information would be leaked or that their reporting would be complicit in the crime and exacerbate the incident. However, that is exactly what the perpetrators wanted, and I felt a sense of frustration at this dilemma. And since this incident took place in the space of the internet, it was difficult to identify all the victims and perpetrators. There may be victims who are still unable to talk to anyone about this incident, and they're suffering from the trauma of the incident, as well as perpetrators who are repeating similar crimes without facing any legal action. It was not easy for me to watch this documentary because it was hard for me to face the fact that people my age are suffering. While I felt there is a need to prevent the recurrence of this problem and to consider the issues exposed by the media coverage instead of running away from them.
Excuse me, may I also state something in relation to Akina's opinion?
Yes, this is Karin, a fourth-year student. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mick. Like Akina, I too was surprised that at first the public did not see this case as a problem at all, and that it was considered just another common example of sexual violence against women. I think the victims' lives were ruined by people who thought it was easy to say, I was just watching or participating in a chat. Also noteworthy in this case is the fact that the victims included minors such as junior and senior high school students. Not only the ringleaders got caught and doctor, but also other arrestees and viewers are guilty of threatening minors who have not yet developed sophisticated judgment and inflicting scares that will never go away. The problem with digital sex crimes is that they are difficult for adults to see. Children feel unable to ask for help until it is too late. And once sexual photos and videos are saved, it is difficult to erase them completely. In this case, it is also said that sexual grooming took place. This refers to approaching minors to establish trust while considering that the purpose is to make sexual requests. Online grooming is becoming a problem in Japan as well, and recently there has been talk of new grooming crimes.
Thank you very much, Akina and Colin. I think grooming, which Colin mentioned at the end, is a necessary element to consider in this case, and it seems to be one of the means that are easily used in digital sex crimes.
Thank you very much, Miku. I believe that one characteristic of digital sex crime is that the perpetrators are often anonymous and the damage is likely to be more extensive than for non-digital sex crimes. In addition, because of the possibility of digital tattoos, traces of such damage can remain semi-permanently against the victim's will. She or he is both exposed to future exposure and scared for life from the initial victimization. While these crimes cause such irreversible damage, the hurdle to perpetration is very low compared to that of other crimes. Many of the perpetrators in this case probably felt little guilt for these criminal acts. Evidence of this is the number of chat room visitors in the Nth room case, which total to 260,000. Another major problem of this digital sex crime is how easy it is to use social networking service for victimization. There is an especially high number of underage victims. Although the Nth room case was a large-scale and organized crime in Japan too, there is no end to the number of crimes committed by individuals or acts that could lead to crimes. As Karin mentioned earlier, there are several known cases of adults attempting to contact minors for sexual purpose on social networking sites. Thus, since many digital sex crimes are committed using platforms easily accessible to minors, we think it is vital to make minors aware of the dangers lurking behind the ease and convenience of these platforms.
Thank you very much, Maho. The depth of the connection between SNS and minors is an important topic when considering digital sex crimes. And I agree with Maho's point that it is necessary to make minors aware of the danger. Let's now turn to Nayeon, who gave us an overview of the case earlier, and ask her what she thought of the documentary.
Thank you, Miku. As I watched the documentary, I got experiences shocked when I first read the article reporting on this case. Seeing the perpetrators who felt no guilt while producing sexually exploitative materials and the power dynamic among the perpetrators formed by sharing sexually exploitative materials, it seemed that they do not consider the victims as equal human beings, but only as sexual objects. I found this is the most painful throughout watching the documentary. However, I feel that the punishment for the perpetrators is light compared to their criminal acts. The operations of the Nth room and doctor's room were sentenced to 34 and 42 years in prison, while the accomplices who committed the crimes were sentenced to relatively short terms of roughly like 15 years or less. Accomplices who committed the crimes while operating the chat rooms together were sentenced to relatively short terms of imprisonment, generally less than 15 years. However, the punishment received by the perpetrators are also unusual in Korea, as most perpetrators of similar digital sex crimes do not receive such punishments. We also find it problematic that there is a lack of human resources to track and punish cyber sex crimes. Crime has changed rapidly with technology development, but investigative agencies and law have not kept pace as it continues to evolve. Immediately after the Antrim case was reported, many women took to SNS to express their solidarity with the victims and argue that perpetrators be severely punished. However, since then, people have accessed the SNS account of the women who made such statements and saving photos in which their faces appeared and photoshopping them into sexual photos. Although no crimes were identified in public spaces, women who believed that their photos could be altered and shared without permission in closed spaces such as Antrim removed their expressions of solidarity from the internet to protect themselves. I think this development illustrates Korean society's current reality involving digital sex crimes. We must do something to resist the silencing of women who speak out in support of victims. They must not become victims of backlash. The Antrim case continues to plague us, and I don't believe that a single investigation and punishment will eliminate future digital sex crimes. For this reason, the number of specialized personnel assigned to investigative digital sex crimes must be increased, and the level of punishment must be further raised. And also, digital sex crime education for the digital native generation must be further intensified.
Thank you very much, Nayeon, for sharing with us how the Ansrum case was received in South Korea and telling us about the reaction on SNS. This information was very valuable. It is truly unbelievable that, even after such a horrific incident, acts that mimic it continued, but that is why we need to change our preventative approaches. To conclude today's discussion, I'd like to ask Akina to explain about sex crimes in Japan related to the Ansrum case. Here's Akina.
Thank you very much, Miku. I would like to talk about sex crimes committed by teachers in elementary and junior high schools in Japan. In many cases of sex crimes that occur in schools, students are not able to confide in others due to pressure from teachers, even if they have been subjected to indecent acts by teachers. This is similar to the situation in the Ansrum case, where the victims had no choice but to obey the perpetrators in order to protect themselves, because the perpetrators had their personal information. This kind of misuse of the trust placed in the teacher or other power in an unequal hierarchical relationship should not occur in any situation, not only in education. However, such relationships can easily arise due to differences in age, gender, position, etc., and have resulted in many sex crimes. In addition, many minors are victimized by sex crimes in schools that share the power dynamics of the Nth Room case. Surprisingly, prior to the recent passage of a law, blocking teachers fired for sexual assault on students from returning to the classroom, it was stipulated that teachers in Japan who had committed indecent acts against students could, after a lapse of time, be re-licensed to teach. However, it is still not impossible for such teachers to return. As in the Nth Room case, it is difficult to know when and where victimization is occurring and who is suffering from sex crimes in schools. And as Nayeon mentioned earlier, prevention is very important. We need to enact a system that can prevent cases in the first place and guarantee the safety of victims.
Thank you very much, Akina. From what Akina said, I felt some shocked at how lenient punishment for sex crimes in Japan is. However, we need to take seriously the fact that this is the current situation in Japan, and we need to think about this issue and speak out. Today, we have discussed the issues of digital sex using the Nth Room case as an example. While listening to the opinions of the others, I thought that the seriousness of digital sex crimes lies in the fact that they occur in a digital space that is easily accessible, but where it's difficult to completely delete data, and in how that takes advantage of power relations, especially when the victim is a minor. Nowadays, deepfake pornography can be easily created, and its production has become a prevalent sex crime in Japan. In the future seminar activities of us, we intend to discuss the necessity of social systems and educational activities that prevent digital sex crimes. This concludes today's discussion. Thank you all for your kind attention.